Hi, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Marcus Nepper. I'm a client services specialist over at Tutor.com. And thank you so much for joining the webinar today. There are a couple of things that I wanted to go over first. All of you are currently muted, and if at any point you do have any questions, whether that's about the content that we're talking about, or if you're having any technical difficulties, there is a question box attached to your control panel and you'll be able to submit all your questions there. We will be doing a Q&A at the end. And if there are any technical issues, I'll be able to help you out throughout the entire presentation. There will also be a follow-up email that will be sent out after about 24 hours after the webinar is done, and that will include both a recording as well as the PowerPoint for this presentation. Um, but now back to the presentation at hand. Today, we're going to be going over burnout and kind of how to recognize it and what you can do about it. And this past year, basically everybody that I know, both professionally and personally, has dealt with burnout in some fashion, whether that's because schools have been constantly changing or their job environment has changed. There's a lot of reasons that could be contributing to it. And we thought it would be super helpful to just kind of go over the ways that we can address that so that it doesn't continue to weigh us down. So our presenter today, Rachel Ekman, is back, and she's going to be sharing some of the research and information that she was able to find, and she'll be talking about that today. So, Rachel, feel free to take it away.
Thank you, Marcus, and thank you everyone for joining us today. And as Marcus said, I think that we can all relate to an extent with burnout. I think we've all felt it in some form or another over the last year and a half or so. Just to give you a little bit of insight into my personal experience with burnout, I have been there myself. I can tell you beyond the shadow of a doubt, I know exactly how it feels, how difficult it can be to kind of get out of that whole rut and that whole kind of funk that you're in. And I have over the course of my life experienced burnout from a variety of different things: caretaker fatigue, caregiver fatigue, just workplace burnout, all kinds of different things. So I just want you to know I am speaking completely and totally from a place of 100% experience, compassion, understanding. And the thing that is the most important is just understanding and acknowledging how have we gotten here and how do we get out. The first step to solving any problem is to know that you have a problem and to acknowledge what it really is. So let's start by recognizing how we've gotten to this point. How often do you say, or have you heard somebody say, or has someone said to you, hey, have you tried turning it off and turning it on again? And what are we talking about that? We're talking about fixing something, right? Something's not working properly. So have you tried turning it off and turning it back on again? Well, let's examine that a little bit deeper. What is it? What does that imply? It implies that something that's been running nonstop for too long is not going to be able to function properly. And that's what's happening to us when we're experiencing burnout. We are just running too long, nonstop, without the opportunity to turn ourselves off. It's not a new concept. Now, it's not related to COVID. It has been exacerbated by COVID, but burnout is something that the psychological community has been talking about for decades, since the 70s. It's not a clinical diagnosis, but it is very, very real. And it has become an increasingly common problem with the advent and then integration of the newer and more interactive technologies, because we're never disconnected anymore. We are just never powered down. One of the biggest hurdles to dealing with burnout and to really understanding that we have it in the first place is that it happens so gradually over time. And very often we start to overcompensate and we become used to feeling a certain way. We become used to experiencing things a certain way and reacting in certain ways. And we don't even realize that that's not necessarily how we should be feeling or how we used to feel in the same situation. So let's talk about what makes burnout different from just being overtired or a little overly stressed out. In terms of working hours per week on average, the US is pretty far up there at the top on a global standpoint. And although the average weekly working hours have gone down in the last 40 years or so, coincidentally or not, since they started talking about workplace burnout, there has been a significant, almost you could really call it a paradigm shift in what constitutes a working hour in the age of technical advancements like phones, cell phones, laptops, Wi Fi, the cloud, because work is no longer neatly kept in the office. It doesn't stay put when we're supposed to be done for the day, it is running amok in every aspect of our lives. And when we talk about working hours, because of that, the lines are just blurry. Once upon a time, you would check in, you would work your daily work, and then you'd clock out, and then you would be finished for the day. So by the time you got to your going home commute, work was physically being put behind you. And so now that we have cell phones, you leave work, but you're not really leaving work because your work is virtually chasing after you, even after you've left the building. Think about your working life. Where does it start and where does it end? When you're driving home from work and you get a call in the car or on the train from the office or from a client or from the school, do you pick it up or do you ignore it because you're off of work? So now, next thing you know, you pick up the call. You've spent your entire commute home dealing with whatever the issue is. Maybe you're still on the phone when you walk in the door. And now, without even realizing it, you've taken work home with you and invited it in. Or maybe you have your work email connected to your cell phone or your tablet and it's late in the evening. You're finishing up dinner, you're about to watch a movie with your family, and you hear that ping go off. Do you say, you know what? I'm clocked out for the day, and you shut your phone off? Or do you check it? And even if you don't check it, that ping has interrupted your downtime. So even if you're not going to read the email, you know that it's there. So we're just constantly, perpetually, always connected. And another unfortunate side effect of that constant ability to be connected has been the redefinition of what constitutes urgent and definitely what constitutes an emergency. Once upon a time, we had very different guidelines for that, for what was important, what could wait. Just because we can always get a hold of someone doesn't mean that we should. When, once upon a time again, in order to get in touch with a colleague after hours, they'd have to call you at home. They'd have to wait for you to get home, and then they'd have to call you at home. And then maybe even interrupt your dinner, maybe even not get you on the phone right away. They'd have to ask for you through a spouse or a parent. People would think long and hard about reaching out and contacting someone after work because of that process. And more often than not, the determination was that whatever it was could wait until the next day. Sometimes even gasp over the weekends until Monday morning. That's just not how it is anymore. Every single little thing carries a sense of urgency that was once very uncommon, that was once really reserved for things that were actually urgent. And it's because we allow it. Because how often do we say, you know what, I'm off work. I do not have the time to deal with this. It's not an issue. We need to better prioritize what's important after hours. I just want to take care of it so that it's not sitting over the weekend or it's not hanging over my head on Monday morning. And what that basically leads to is that we never shut off, we never stop, and most terribly, we have no boundaries between our personal life and our work life. Now, people tend to use the terms stress and anxiety interchangeably, but they're actually two very different things. When we're talking about stress, stress is an outside force that's acting on you. Think about the phrase distressed denim for a second. I know that sounds like a weird example, but bear with me. What does that mean to you visually? When you picture a pair of jeans in a store that's called distressed denim, think about what you see in front of you. Distressed denim means it has that worn look, right? That we consider it to be vintage and cool, and it looks broken in, and they're probably more comfortable than the non-distressed denim clothes. Now, in terms of jeans, basically what we're talking about is that there's no longer really brand new fabric, because the act of inducing stress to the fabric causes an amount of damage depending on how much stress you put on. So if they distress the denim the right way, it's going to have that funky, cool, worn in look, and it's going to look really great, and it's going to be more comfortable. But if they put too much stress on the denim, what's going to happen? It's going to tear through the fabric. Same applies for us. We can't avoid stress. It's found everywhere. It's going to be in our lives no matter what. And some stress in small amounts is actually a positive thing. They've proven that the right amounts of constructive stress in small doses, things like deadlines, healthy competition, benchmarks to meet, those actually lead to increased productivity, to success, to achievement. But then if we add too much stress onto our day, eventually it's going to tear through the fabric. So it's really about managing and limiting the amount of stress into ways that benefits us. Because when we become too stressed out, that's when we move into suffering from anxiety. Now, anxiety is something more internal than stress, and it can exist with or without any actual stress in our lives. So a person can feel anxious for no reason at all. And unlike stress, there really isn't a positive side to anxiety. And also, unlike stress, it can be considered a mental health disorder that requires treatment. So essentially, although again, we use the terms interchangeably, anxiety is really the byproduct of the stress. And in too large of a dose, anxiety can become something that is insurmountable without intervention. What do I mean by that? It means that if you allow it to go too far, you might actually need to go see a doctor. Approximately a third of Americans have experienced some kind of anxiety disorder in their lifetimes. Now, with our jobs chasing us all over town, it's no wonder that we're buried in stress. But that's not the only place that we allow stress into our lives. How many of you are plugged into the news, into social media, into the never ending drama of all of the things that are going on in our digital and personal lives? None of it is relaxing, and in large doses, and when it's we're really just inundated in it and we're just swimming in it all the time, it is not good for us. We're not getting the ability to recharge and relax. Think about for a moment when you say, you know what, I'm going to lie down and take a break. When you lie down to take a break, do you take your phone with you and scroll through your phone while you're taking that break? Because I would caution you that that might not actually be functioning as a break. So there are stressors all over. And the thing that we need to do is try to identify the ones that are really starting to take a toll on us and try to get them out of our lives long enough to power down. This is where it comes into play for recognizing burnout. How do we know that we're just feeling stressed out, or that we're feeling anxiety, or that we're actually in a place of full-blown burnout? The first thing you need to do is start to listen to yourself. Pay attention to the words that you're using when you're talking to other people, when you're talking to yourself, when you're just thinking inside of your own head. You want to keep an eye out for changes. What has changed about what you say? Did you at one point say, man, I was up all night and I am super tired? And then somewhere along the lines shift to, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I'm just always exhausted. Are you changing the way you complain about things? Did you used to say, oh man, this meeting's not my favorite, but whatever, it'll be over in an hour? And now is it becoming something somewhat more dramatic to you? So listen to the way you talk. Listen to the way you interact with people. Try to take a step back and evaluate the way you react to people, and see if you think that you can identify changes, significant changes in your language and in your behavior over time. And it's the same for the symptoms of burnout. Again, behavioral changes are your number one cue. So there was a meeting that you have every Thursday, and you used to look forward to the meeting, even though sometimes it would run long. Like, it was just a great opportunity to do brainstorming, and you liked hanging out with your colleagues that you didn't get to spend time with all the time. And this meeting was just, something that you almost kind of looked forward to over the course of your week. And now you're not looking forward to it. You complain about having to go. You're not prepared. You don't take notes. You don't provide any contribution during the meeting. Maybe you even find yourself checking the time multiple times through the meeting. That's a significant change. Something along the lines of exhaustion or fatigue. Did you fall out of your workout routine gradually to the point where now you no longer ever go for your afternoon walk? That seems like a small thing, because in your mind you go, well, I've just been really tired lately. And we can rationalize something like that away, to the point where, again, we normalize burnout for ourselves, and it keeps us in it longer and longer. So it's not something that should be okay with you. You shouldn't just say, well, I've just been really tired lately and I just haven't had the time to go for my walk. If you've consistently missed a part of your routine, skipped a part of your routine, felt a particular way that's significantly different from what you're used to, it's time to take a step back and say, okay, is this really my new normal, or am I experiencing a period of burnout? And then, of course, you might have physical symptoms as well. Psychosomatic symptoms are basically the effects of mental and emotional stress that manifest as actual physical ailments. So think for a moment of the term hangry. What is that? That's how we describe being cranky, because we're hungry. And that's because our mental and emotional well-being is inextricably linked to our physical well-being. Well, that goes both ways. Our overall wellness is very much like a machine. Think about the engine in your car. There are four basic things that your engine needs, right? It needs air, it needs compression, it needs ignition with fuel and spark, and then it needs exhaust. Let's say we take one of those things away, for example, fuel. Will your engine still run? It won't. And that's because it needs the balance of all of its essential components in order to function properly. And we're the same way. So our physical, mental, and emotional well-being rely and run on that same type of delicate balance between them. And if we don't have that balance, you will feel the effects of it. So don't discount the physical symptoms as always being something separate from the emotional and the mental stuff that you're feeling. So hopefully now we've identified that we are experiencing burnout. I mean, hopefully we wouldn't be, but if we are, now at least we've faced it, right? So what can we do to relieve it? Let's go back to our example of turning something off and turning it back on. If you never allow your brain, your body, and your psychological state to power down, you're going to start to become glitchy like your laptop. You won't be processing things properly. So we need to find ways to turn ourselves off. There are different ways that you can manage stress, and it's going to be completely different for everyone. The most important thing is to find something that works for you. So the thing that we recommend always, though, is start by saying no. Again, with the constant connectivity, we have this tendency to just accept things, accept the phone call, accept the text message, accept the infiltration of work into our lives. And to that end, we accept more work than maybe we're actually capable of doing within the prescribed working hours that we have for the week, which makes us have to work harder and longer hours and more at home and lose some of our downtime. So start by saying no. If you're asked to do something, whether it's a work project or a carpool pickup or some kind of an extracurricular program, and you know that you don't have the time without putting yourself into that overdrive period, just say no. Don't try to push through managing stress. It's okay. It doesn't make you weak. It doesn't make you soft. It's okay to just stop and say, you know what? This is going to be too much for me, so I'm not going to take it on. And then you want to identify outlets. And again, everyone has something different. What works for someone is not going to work for someone else. Something that works great for me is unplugging. I work online. I do my regular full-time job online. I teach online. And then I also do volunteer programming online. And then in addition to all of that, like most people, I have personal email, I have social media. That is a lot of screen time. So on Saturdays, I unplug pretty much completely. I answer some calls or some texts over the course of the day, but really only once or twice a day. And throughout the day, I stay active. I do yard work. I get outside. I clean my house. I do crafts and projects. It's my day. And so whatever I do on Saturday, I do it without any screens. I'm completely unplugged. And it felt a little weird at first, and I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, but now it is my favorite part of the week. So that works great for me. And I recommend everyone try unplugging. But if that's not your thing, find what works for you. The most important thing is to have an outlet that you can turn to when you start to feel bottled up with stress. And the great thing about self care is that it's almost never entirely selfish, because you'd be surprised how much people will notice when you're in a better place. You will be kinder, you'll be more patient with people, you're going to react much differently to different situations. And then you'd be surprised how much more often you will smile when you're feeling less stressed out. You're just naturally inclined to smile more. And that, in and of itself, will naturally make the people around you react differently to you and interact differently with you. So, even though self care has the word self in it, it has an impact on everyone around you. And not to mention, you'll be more rested, you'll physically appear and feel healthier, and you'll feel better. So, when you're on an airplane, and I'd love to use this example, and it's just because it's the truth. When you're on an airplane, they say to you, in the event that we lose oxygen, the oxygen masks are going to drop down, and make sure to do what? Make sure to put your mask on before you try to help anyone else. That's because if you're out of oxygen, you can't help anyone else. You have to be able to breathe in order to be able to help the person to your left or to your right. And the same is true for everything in life. You have to take care of you so that you can continue to take care of the people around you. So make sure, more than anything, that you're putting your oxygen mask on. And this all brings us to recovery, because just relieving burnout isn't enough. We want to get out of it, we want to shake it off, and we want to be done with it. And then, most importantly, we want to not have it happen again. Now, that isn't to say that these are steps that you can take and it's going to just magically happen for you. It could take weeks, it could take months. Again, it depends on a lot of different personal factors. Everyone is different. But the sooner you get started, the sooner your recovery period can get underway. So getting organized may sound counterintuitive, because it sounds like, well, now you've got me going back to work. But organization is actually a really fantastic way to help pull yourself out of burnout. A lot of research has shown incredible positive side effects on mental health in a variety of different ways. And it's a wonderful form of stress relief. Decluttering, cleaning up, cleaning out, it's methodical. It's very therapeutic in nature, and it also helps you, most importantly, get a little bit of a sense of control back in your life. And very often, that feeling like we're not in control of our own life is one of the things that is the greatest contributor to our sense of burnout. So even something as simple as deleting a whole pile of emails from your inbox is tremendous in helping your mind declutter. And like organizing, keeping a strict routine can also help to mitigate the influence of outside stressors in your life. Again, you're putting a sense of control back into your life. You have now purposefully and consciously put yourself back in charge of your own schedule. And this will most importantly help you to establish some really healthy boundaries. You can prioritize your own well being. You make determinations on what you're going to do with your own time. And now you have a way to achieve some much needed balance and boundaries between your leisurely activities, between your work activities, between your family activities. And it just puts you back in the driver's seat in a way that will be very impactful moving forward. And there are so many benefits to journaling that I couldn't even begin to name them all for you right now. But one thing I want to mention about journaling is that lately I hear more and more about gratitude journals. And I love a gratitude journal. I've kept many gratitude journals in my life, and I think that they're fantastic. However, positive psychology has recently become very trendy. And I think some of the meaning behind it has gotten lost in translation. It's not about never having a negative thought or feeling and just smiling and being grateful and glass half full every minute of every day. The concept behind it is empowerment, that you have within you all the tools to take care of yourself. But that doesn't mean that your negative feelings and emotions are less valid or less valuable than your positive ones. So when you're journaling, particularly when you're journaling as a method of stress management and stress relief, don't be afraid to let all your feelings out, no matter what they are. I always recommend using an actual notebook, writing, physically writing in your journal, because there are tons and tons of studies that say the act of writing is just cathartic in its own right, that it is great for cognitive improvement, that it's great for stress relief, that it's great for hand-eye coordination, all kinds of things, great for handwriting practice. But if you have no time or you don't like the idea of writing on paper, pen to paper, there are some fantastic journaling apps out there also. So take a look at those also. But journaling, you can't go wrong in any aspect. And if none of those things really speak to you or jump out at you, or maybe you've tried those and you want more, some other great options are to just prioritize your sleep. It's really important. Your body's never going to completely recover until it has the opportunity to do it. That is, these days especially, the one time a day that your brain is actually powering down. And so when you're stressed out and you're feeling anxiety and you're not getting adequate sleep, you're losing that precious off time for your brain, and it's making things worse instead of better. Exercise, endorphins, the positive effects of physical activity are just long determined. So there are tons of things that you can do. And again, make it personal, make it all about you, do what works for you, make that list of the things that make you happy, pick some of the stuff on the list and do them. Now, nobody can ever do anything completely on their own, right? That's just, we all know every once in a while, you're just going to need help. Like right now, I just needed some help from my little girl who wanted to contribute to the webinar in the background. So think about enlisting help anywhere you're comfortable. Family, friends, there are tons of support groups, online support groups, in-person support groups, and don't be afraid to reach out and seek professional help if that's something that you need also. But never ever feel in any way hesitant to go out and reach out for someone else to help you. Of course, you want some alone time. Of course, there are certain things that are personal, but within reason, letting other people in and letting other people help you is just one of the most important ways to get yourself back into a positive, healthy place. There are tons of resources online. And these are some really great ones. I happen to love that TED Talk that's listed there. And then there are some quizzes that you can take, some things that will help you to identify the symptoms and the warning signs and the triggers even for burnout for yourself. And there's no shortage of resources and of help out there. The two lower links there on the bottom are some fantastic resilience and mindfulness exercises that are just wonderful to try. Try them out, fold them into your routine, share them with your friends. They're really, really great. And there's tons more out there. This is just a short list of some of my favorite ones. The most important thing to remember is this. This is a temporary state. No matter what, your burnout is not going to be permanent. You will get back there. It's just a matter of what can you do to take care of yourself to get yourself there quicker. You'll get back to your healthy state. You just need to focus on it and you need to focus on yourself. So unplug, turn off, power down, get yourself out of the connection for long enough to get yourself back to a positive place. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rachel. Now, just so you all know, is the time that if you have any questions, you can submit those into the question box and we will be able to answer them. Otherwise, I just kind of wanted to say how interesting it is and how kind of both of us decompress and how completely different it is. You find that doing yard work and stuff like that is really helpful. I'm the complete opposite. I can't do any of that. I need to be able to like lay down, watch TV or play video games in order to actually get my energy
Oh,
levels back to a place where, maybe I could do some yard work. So I just found it kind of funny how wildly different and kind of varied those decompression activities can actually be.
a
And
hundred
then,
percent. You're a
yeah,
hundred percent right, Marcus. And you know what? I'll tell you something else that's very strange about me. I'm like a stress cleaner. So if I'm feeling stressed out and I'm feeling a little bit, just overwrought and I'm starting to feel that anxiety, I clean my kitchen.
honestly, sometimes just a clean environment helps so much in kind of like resetting your brain. But yeah, so if there are any questions, feel free to drop them into the question box and we'll be taking those. Otherwise, we'll leave the floor open for another minute or so. But thank you again so much for joining today's webinar and keep an eye out for the recording and slides that will be sent out tomorrow. But yeah, thank you so much.